So it's been a little over a year since my last update on the game, and a lot has changed within that time. We finished the final few victory animations that we didn't get to from the previous video, as well as revamping the characters' animations in the game. We also started working on some of the levels for the game, adding some power-ups, and adding more customization options for players to choose from. And we've also added a new member to the team, which means there are more people that I have to pay now. So I created a Patreon so you guys can help support us in developing the game. Instead of waiting months and months for a new video, you'll be able to see what we're working on every week, whether it's for the game or for a new video. And you'll also get your name in the credits of the game as a supporter. We're planning on trying something cool for this, and I'll get to that later in the video. So yeah, make sure to check out the Patreon so we can keep making the game. Thanks. Let's start off by showing the new revamped animations for the character. The original gameplay animations were made by me all the way back in 2019, and I had no knowledge at the time of how to animate, so those animations were really stiff. After bringing Rodrigo onto the team, he was able to make new animations for the character that makes him look a lot more natural. But before I added the new animations, I had to do something about this nightmare. If you don't know what you're looking at, this is the animated graph responsible for transitioning from one animation to another. So when you jump, the character will use this to know when he needs to be in the jumping animation, or well, actually the falling animation, because I didn't have a jumping animation at the time. You basically have to be some sort of crazy person to be able to decipher this, so I decided to just redo it, and do it right this time. You see, there's an option to make something called a substate, where you can group together similar animations. So for example, I can put all the ledge animations into one substate called ledge. And now if I need to find a ledge animation, I know I can look in this substate instead of finding it in this tangled mess. After fixing everything, this is now what it looks like. There are probably some ways that this could still be improved, but it works great and I can easily find everything I need, so I'm okay with it. And one of these is actually a blend tree and not a substate. This is used to make it so that the character can smoothly transition from a walking animation to a running animation based on the speed of the character. Or I can make the character lean to the side a bit when he's changing direction. After adding in these animations, the character's movement looks a whole lot smoother than it did before. Some animations look fairly similar to the previous ones, but some of them, like the running animation, are clearly much better. We also added some new movement mechanics. Rodrigo had suggested that we add a roll after the character dives, because it looked a bit odd that the character is just suddenly back on his feet. The roll looks a whole lot better. There's even some control to it so you can change the direction after landing. We then took this concept and changed the bonk animation a bit. Before, it was just character dives into wall, character gets knocked back, and now character is standing on feet. Now we have it so that when the character gets hit by a power-up or dives into a wall, he'll gradually fall backwards and land into the roll like the dive, except in the opposite direction. For the first part of this animation, we took inspiration from stuff like Street Fighter, where the character will get knocked back and fall backwards. And then for the roll, we wanted it to be something quick. We initially planned on having it so the character would land on his back and did a kip up, but it felt really slow. The game is supposed to be a racing game, but I didn't want there to be that much downtime from making a mistake, so we went with a backwards roll instead. And the last few animations that we added are some idle animations. If the character were to sit around for a bit not moving, then they'll eventually start doing one of the idle animations. The first one is like the character stretching and getting warmed up for a race. And the second one is just the character looking around and being surprised by everything around him. We only have 2 idle animations at the moment, but we may add more later on if we think that 2 is not enough. Now let's continue on with some more animations and showcase the final few victory animations we didn't get to last time. Up first we have the bee. His animation starts with him poking a beehive with a stick, making all the bees inside angry. They start to swarm around him, stinging his face multiple times in the process. He shakes it off and goes right back to it. The next one is the Navy officer. For this one, we transformed his victory podium into a command center where you can issue commands and fire off missiles. The wizard is kind of a funny one. We bring one of the losing players onto the stage, and the wizard makes him drink a strange potion. This turns him into a frog for a short time before the wizard turns him back to normal. For the football player, we had him catch the ball and score a touchdown. The player then celebrates with this little signature dance. For the knight, we wanted to make a reference to Dark Souls, and some of you guys caught on to this from the previous video. We start with him lighting a fire to roast some marshmallows, but as he's about to start cooking, the fire blows out, causing the knight to get really angry. For the prisoner, we have him locked up in his cell, trying to dig a way out with a spoon from his lunch. He suddenly hears a sound, making him think someone's coming, so he covers up the hole and pretends like he's not doing anything. The angel is a cool one because we integrate it with the victory music. He starts by playing the harp, and then when one of the strings snaps, he freaks out and falls to the ground. At the same time, we have part of the melody stop playing until he fixes it and starts playing again. For the cheerleader, Rodrigo choreographed some random cheer for the characters to dance to. This was kind of a tough one because we couldn't really think of anything concrete for this one, but in the end I think it still looks pretty good. Our dinosaur was inspired by something like Godzilla. We have him stomping around, destroying a city, and trying to swat away the planes flying around him. It ends with him breathing fire towards the sky. For the robot, we thought it would be funny for him to power a blender using the outlet on his stomach. He makes a smoothie out of some nuts and bolts, while shocking himself in the process. And finally, we have the plague doctor accompanied by a crow flying around him. The crow lands on its cane and scares him by making a sound right in his face, so he shoos it off. Now that we've seen all the victory animations, I think we should start looking at the other customization options we added for the different costumes. Before we had it so that there was just a default character, as well as the 30 different costumes that we made, but we wanted to have more customization than this. So we took inspiration from Smash Bros. And made it so that we can have different color variations of the costumes. On top of the regular costume, we made it so that there will be one color variation for each of the player colors, one variation of gold, silver, and bronze, and one alternate costume color. Now, there are a lot of costumes and variations, so I'll probably only be able to show a few of them while I talk about this, but essentially how it's going to work in the game is that you can complete challenges with those costumes to unlock the alternate color variations. This is inspired by things like the golden camos in games like Call of Duty. We haven't finalized what these challenges will be, but it'll probably be something like play X amount of races while wearing the costume to unlock the skins. This way you'll always have something that you can work towards while playing. And I probably didn't get through many of the costume color variations there, but I don't want to stretch this part out for another 10 minutes, so I think we should shift over into something really exciting, the levels. With the addition of Nogam, we now had a level designer to help us start making levels. We sat around and brainstormed some ideas for levels, and finally thought up some vague ideas for 10 different levels, each with their own theme. These level ideas were initially a forest camp, a slime farm, a pyramid, a beachside level, a rhythm level, an obstacle course stadium, a lava castle, a haunted mansion, an outer space ice planet, and a mountain. These ideas were eventually fleshed out more as we worked on them, and one even ended up changing completely in the final version of the level. The renders I just showed you were the concepts that Nogam made in Magic of Voxel, but before he even did those, he would always send me a sketch of what he was planning on the level looking like. After we approved the sketches, he would make the level as a model in Magic Voxel, and then import that into Unity. Next began the grayboxing phase. He would use the concepts he designed to then shape out a level in Unity using Pro Builder. As he was doing this, he'd constantly be testing the level as he made it to make sure everything works well with the player. Eventually we ended up with 10 stages that the player could run around on, and all of them worked really well. For 8 of the 10 levels, we made them in a traditional racetrack fashion, where there will be a starting line, and then you race a couple of laps around a track. But for the last 2 levels, we took an approach similar to the levels like Mount Wario from Mario Kart 8, where laps are replaced with checkpoints along one really long level. The tracks that we did this for are the pyramid and the mountain. The pyramid level starts in the desert, some distance away from the pyramid, and then players will race towards the bottom of the pyramid and up and around all the way to the room at the top. The mountain level we designed as a sort of final challenge. This will be our game's equivalent of Mario Kart's Rainbow Road in a way. Starting at the base, players will ascend the mountain, eventually ending up at the finish line in the sky. Along the way, players will face many obstacles, all of which are challenges that are taken from the other 9 levels. These will include things like falling pillars, breaking platforms, moving books, bouncing slimes, and a lot more. These levels aren't fully fleshed out yet and might change later on, so I don't want to go into too much detail. I'm mainly saying this because our forest training camp level idea somehow turned into a treetop hot springs resort. This was initially supposed to be a level designed as a starter level, with a forest camp theme that would teach players how to play. After talking with Nogam and Rodrigo for a while, this eventually turned into something completely different, and we all liked the new idea. Rodrigo started working on the final 3D modeling of the level after Nogam finished the graybox phase, and the level is now basically finished. All of the 3D modeling work is finished, as well as a lot of the NPC animations, but I still think that some work needs to go into it. The background of the level is kinda boring to look at. There isn't really much except for a few barren trees and some smoke particle effects at the bottom. And the skybox is just a default one that Unity had, so we need to figure out what to do about that. As for the actual level itself though, we have a welcoming area for guests of the hot springs, followed by some workers running around carrying towels and hot tubs, which act as easy obstacles for the player to get around. There are also characters relaxing in a hot tub outside the hot springs area. Then, the hot springs area is placed inside of a giant tree, and inside you can see a lot of the NPCs relaxing. Moving past that area, you can see a water geyser gushing outside with some tourists watching. And the final part of the level is a wall jump section that brings the player back to the start. I'm really happy with the overall structure and layout of the level, and I think that with a better background and maybe some better lighting, it'll be really cool. We'll probably be naming this level Tree Springs Resort. I looked up tree springs on Google and saw an image of a tree that's somehow shooting out spring water, so I guess our level idea makes sense after all. Other than that, we need to figure out how to optimize the level better. I'm not sure why, but the game runs horribly on this level. I'll have to figure out how to use Unity's profiler window to figure out what to do to improve performance, because we're even facing problems with FPS in one small section of the other level we're working on. We don't really have much of this level done yet, but we're already facing performance issues. But so far we're designing this part of the level as a beachside festival area. This is a town where jellyfish are basically the mascot, so everything here is themed after jellyfish. You have the balloons of jellyfish, picture stands of jellyfish, and even popcorn bowls shaped like jellyfish. Rodrigo is planning on separating this area into different sections, like an area for food, an area for clothing shops, and an area for the beach. And that's pretty much all we have done for this level so far. Looking around from the beach, you can see a cannon off in the distance, as well as some platforms underwater, so you can probably guess how this level is going to progress from here. We haven't started work on any of the other levels yet, so I'll probably save those for when we have more work finished. And I know I said we were working on 10 levels, but we're actually making a secret 11th level as well. Unlike the other levels, this one won't be a racing track, but will instead be a level that you can freely explore. It's inspired by the artwork from before of some of the characters chilling in a museum. We wanted to make a level where players could explore behind the scenes stuff like the Insomniac Museum from Ratchet & Clank games. We've just started playing this one out, but so far we're planning on having it so that there will be a few different sections of the museum. There will be a welcoming area with a few things like a bathroom, a food area, and a place to see us developers of the game. It would be cool if you could interact with us and if we record some voice lines for this area as well. The beginning area will then branch off into 3 different sections. In this picture you can see 2 of them. The yellow area is like a playground, and you'll be able to explore the different mechanics that we added in the game, like the level obstacles, power-ups, and stuff like that. We'll be adding details to them so you can get a behind-the-scenes look at maybe how we made it, or maybe some things that we might have scrapped. The red area over here will be for seeing different artwork and concepts. So you'll be able to see some early artwork of the game, like level designs and pictures and other things like that. And finally, we're going to add a section to the bottom left here. This is the section where we will thank all our Patreon supporters by putting them in the game. So if that sounds interesting to you, remember to check out the Patreon. We haven't finalized what we're going to do with this section yet though. We'll probably do some sort of mixture where supporters will be able to find their names on a mural somewhere on the walls. And maybe there will be a VIP section where top supporters will get a statue dedicated to them or something. But for now, I'll have Nogam continue working on the rest of the museum. Meanwhile, Wormhole has been working on the music for the levels, and I've been working on the power-ups. We're not ready to release any new music yet, so let's instead see what I've been doing with the power-ups so far. I think I've showed these before, but we have artwork for 12 different power-ups. So far I've only worked on 10 of these, and I skipped the other 2 for now, and I'll explain why in a bit. But first, we need to be able to get a power-up. For this, we created an item box that resembles a gachapon capsule. Yes, we added gacha mechanics to the power-ups, but the only difference is that you don't spend actual money on them to get an item, you just get a random item. It's supposed to resemble those capsule machines that you would see at an arcade, where you would put in a quarter and get a random toy. We originally had these square item boxes, but they were very reminiscent of Mario Kart item boxes, and I think these are more unique. With these capsules, we can also randomize the colors to one of the 8 different player colors as well. The only thing I don't like about it is the question mark in the middle. I don't really like the blue question mark, but I can't think about how to change it to make it look better. Rodrigo also made this animation where the capsule opens up when you grab it, but I felt like it was too slow, and we'll probably replace it with the capsule just breaking apart. After that, I added a way to make the items randomly loop through during the animation, and end on a random item given to the player. Now there's only one more step left to start adding in the power-ups. I needed to make a checkpoint system that would keep track of every player and what position in the race they're in. This way, items can target a player who's in a higher position than you. So I made a test stage and placed invisible checkpoints around the map. Then it checks the position of every player relative to the next checkpoint. I drew a line in pink here so you guys can see. Once a player passes through a checkpoint, it updates to the next checkpoint. Going backwards to a previous checkpoint will also move the next checkpoint backwards. Now all you have to do is track how many laps each player has finished, which checkpoint they're currently on, and the distance to the next checkpoint. And then using that, you can see which player is in first place, second place, and so on. With these checkpoints in place, we also need to define a track for power-ups to follow. Thanks to Sebastian Legge, this channel's savior, I was able to download his path creator tool and make a path for the power-ups to follow. Now we can use power-ups like the homing missile. This power-up works by first looking if the player in front of them is nearby. If the player is nearby, it starts to home in on them. Otherwise, it starts following the track until it gets closer and can see them. Some of these power-ups don't have certain particle effects yet, so instead of exploding, the rocket just disappears for now. The thundercloud also works in a similar way, except instead of targeting the player in front of them, it targets the player in first. So it'll ignore any player that isn't in first and will continue on past them while following the track. Next, we have some character modifying power-ups like the running shoes. These shoes will give a player a short burst of speed as a one-time thing. Meanwhile, the rocket boots will give a player a speed boost for a longer duration. These boots also make the player lose control and start flailing around from the speed. We also have a triple jump power-up. Normally the character only gets a jump and a double jump, but this power-up adds a third jump, as well as a cool visual effect indicating that the power-up is active. And the last character modifying power-up is the aura. This acts as an invincibility shield, a speed boost, and a moving hitbox for a short period of time. You can run into other players and hit them out of the way, while blocking anything that might hit you. One power-up that isn't like the others is the ice cube. This will freeze every player who's in a position higher than you for a short period of time. This works well when the other players are doing some platforming, since it'll make them freeze and unable to jump. Next are the held items. The first one we did was the megaphone. This makes the player pull out a megaphone and shoot a sound wave out in every direction around him. This sound wave will knock out other players. I think we need to rework this one a bit, because the range is very limited. Next we have a wet floor sign. This is an object that can be placed anywhere on the map, and it'll stay there until someone bumps into it. This is good for blocking certain paths, so other players can't follow. And the last one is the bomb. The player will throw a bomb in an arc in front of them, and it can explode and hit enemies in front of you. Like the rocket, the particle effects aren't there yet, so the bomb just disappears. As for the other 2 power-up icons, the fire trail is changed to a similar idea, but using a chili pepper instead, so we need new artwork for that one. And after trying to implement the dodgeball, it doesn't seem like a good power-up anymore. I was planning on having it so that the player would go into a third-person camera view and name the dodgeball, and then they could throw it in a straight line. But unless there's some sort of aim assist, or we make the ball really big after throwing it, the power-up will probably miss most of the time. So for now I'm just scrapping that idea. but we also came up with a lot of new other power-up ideas. We have a cardboard box, a jack-in-the-box, the chili pepper I mentioned earlier, a jetpack, a camera, a wrecking ball, and a fire extinguisher. We haven't added in the mechanics for these yet, so for now I'll just let you guys try to guess what these power-ups will do. At this point, this has basically become a yearly series, so I'll see you guys in another year with another update on the game. Alright, see ya.